Hello and welcome to the podcast where the rubber hits the road. Where the rubber hits the road, there is friction, and friction generates heat, it generates stress. Chronic stress leads to burnout. And we experience in our work lives situations very similar to this, where we have expectations and we hit different reality than our expectations. And that's where the rubber hits the road. What we have to know, what we must know, is how to respond to those situations, how to handle these situations without getting stressed, anxious, or burnt out. And also, while going through these situations, while navigating these situations, how to grow professionally, personally, and of course, achieve satisfaction. So that's the central theme of this podcast. We are going to bring different leaders from healthcare and other industries on this podcast to talk about the same things. The focus is going to be how are we going to design practical approaches? What are those practical recipes that we can use to deal with situations like this? Although we are in the space of well-being, we call it psycho-commercial well-being, but this is somewhat different than well-being concept that we are used to. This doesn't talk about mindfulness meditation necessarily. It talks about different tools, different practical approaches. So that's what we are going to do in this podcast. And today we have a fantastic leader with us, Jenn. Hello, Jenn.
Hi.
Jenn is a quality improvement and reporting manager at Stanford Healthcare. Jenn is a nurse and a second career nurse with a background in laboratory and clinical research. In her 14 years of nursing journey, Jenn has gone through the frontline nurse and then through the leadership ladder, charge nurse, assistant manager, unit manager in med-surg area, medical surgical area. And she has also held the post of president of her local chapter of Association of California Nurse Leaders, ACNL. I have known Jenn to be a solid supporter of work-life balance, personal and professional development of nurses, and also continuous leadership training and continuous improvement. Jenn holds MBA from Carey Business School, Johns Hopkins University, bachelor's in nursing from UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, and Jenn also holds a master's degree in nutrition from UMass Amherst, and her bachelor's in arts in biochemistry and molecular biology from Boston University. Welcome, Jenn. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Thanks, Amaya. I'm really excited to be here as well. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. So because the topic is where the rubber hits the road, obvious question is, what was your first experience where you faced different reality than expectations? And how did you handle that?
Yeah, great question. I would say, as you described, my journey into leadership, I think I was probably a little bit naive to how the inner workings of a healthcare organization are, meaning politics. So I think as I moved into my first unit manager leader role, I was asked to take on some quality initiatives. And so became very passionate about a particular project. And I worked with my leader, my mentor, and thought we were making evidence-based practice changes, very excited about the care for the patients and what this would mean for them. And so as we got closer to the launch of the project, I recognized that there were systems that weren't aligned with what we were trying to do. So I became frustrated by what I perceived to be the lack of importance that was being placed on that project. And I also recognized that we didn't have all the stakeholders bought into what we were trying to do. And so I felt like we had put all this time, energy, effort, passion into this project only to get to the end and have it basically torn down, negated, and not fully implemented was support. And so that was really a disillusioning time for me because I just felt like, naively, like, why wouldn't you just do this? Like, we have all the evidence to show these things. And so it was really disheartening to see that we didn't have the support of maybe the leaders, of our physician colleagues. And so that was really the first time where I had to like step back and look at what was happening around me, and recognize the barriers that were there that I didn't understand. And so
Mhm.
from that experience, I realized that I needed to know more. I needed to understand more, right? And so that's what really helped me choose to go and get my MBA, because I really felt like I needed to understand more about the business of healthcare. I needed to know more about the forces that are at play and to make me a better leader and to advocate for staff, for patients, and for those types of things. So I think for me, it was just like that aha moment where I was like, I have to know more to do more. So yeah.
This resonates so well,
Mhm.
because I have gone through similar experiences. My background is not healthcare. My background is mechanical engineering. But when I came into healthcare and started applying whatever I knew related to systems, I faced similar challenges. So I can really resonate with that. And your approach of knowing more to do more is
Mhm.
it's so powerful, but it is often missed by many people.
Yeah.
Um, so I always ask questions when I work with nurses. They tell me they're frustrated because of this, that, or overworking, or not getting enough resources. So my question is, as a nurse, what do you think your job is?
Mhm.
And then I get answers, all the right answers, that taking care of patients, making sure patient is well, patient goes home recovered, and feeling healthy. And then my next question comes like, okay, fantastic, that's what you do, but that's what you are hired to do. So you are doing that at a price point. There is a cost to that, to the employer. So do you know what that cost is? And that's
Mhm.
where the aha moment comes like, oh, now I need to know more about this. Maybe the productivity, how productivity works, or how different forces, you said, how different stakeholders in the system work.
Mhm.
So it is very, very important to understand systems. And you said that you went back, did your MBA, and of course, did more understanding studies of systems.
Mhm.
But for many, they don't get out of this vicious cycle. The reality hits them, and I have seen this for new nurses who come out of nursing schools and join hospitals, healthcare industry. It happens to them like they are learning, their learning curve is really fast.
Mhm.
They're trying to learn so many things at once. And then they really never get that time to go back, reflect, understand, study systems to get out of that stressful period. So recent data shows that new nurses leave bedside care in like first 2 years of their career. So, although this is not this is common in all industries, like people coming in, they get this steep learning curve and this vicious cycle. But in healthcare, it is very intense.
Mhm.
What tips would you give to someone like who feels stuck in this cycle? How to get out of this cycle? How to get that time to do that deeper dive to understand what is going around,
Yeah.
how the system is working.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of things that people can do. I know myself, I've been stuck in that rut before where I just, have that kind of emotional pit where I'm just like, I can't see my way out of this, right? And I think that's where the importance of reaching out to mentors is really important. Sometimes they can give you an outside perspective because you can definitely get locked into the small environment that you're in and can't get that outward perspective. So I
Mhm.
think it's important to get maybe somebody who's outside of your department. So if you're
Right.
a nurse, going out to somebody that's in pharmacy or marketing or whatever the case may be, right? Because everybody has those types of experiences, and it's really valuable to hear how others handle that.
Mhm.
I think it's also important so that other people can give you feedback on maybe how you can um, act differently or position yourself differently. And then I think that, like in my case, I was very active in the ACNL, the Association of California Nurse Leaders.
Right.
That really helped me to reach out to other people, get to meet other people, hear what they're facing as well, so you don't feel like you're so alone in what's happening. You definitely get that kind of camaraderie, I guess, in terms of like everybody's kind of functioning under a similar system with little nuances, but ultimately we're all facing the same types of things. And to hear how maybe others have tried to approach those things is really important too. Um, but I think on a personal level, it's really important to take that time to step back and take a breath and say, if you're having that frustrating day, try to focus on something more positive, right? So when I have a bad day or when things aren't going well, I step back and I say, so what did go well today, right? Like what made today good? And I think that focusing on those types of things help you to keep your head above water. It helps you to kind of break free of that constant turmoil and stress that's happening. I would caution that, sometimes that when you are within your peer group,
Mhm.
there's a lot of venting that happens, and that becomes a negative cycle as well. Like it can bury you deeper into what's happening. So I think it's important to surround yourself with people who can understand, but also can help pull you out rather than pulling you down under further. So I think those are like kind of the three things that I've done, or three or four things that I've done to try to recognize what's happening, the stress, and then to help keep me out of that, in terms of like what's happening in the work environment for you. So
It's absolutely, I mean, you're right. You have to have positive anchor somewhere to look at something positive that happens in your daily work. Many times I hear that I joined nursing because I'm passionate about nursing. I want to serve. But what I have seen is only passion doesn't help you go through. You need to understand, you must have that passion to propel you forward in the system, but you also must understand the system, what's going around. And for that, mentorship is key, I guess.
yeah.
If you have good mentor, then you can understand system better, right?
And I would say too, like I think that that's as the healthcare system and patients become more complex, I think that it's more challenging for even nursing schools to prepare students
Yeah.
and prepare those nurses for what they're about to walk into. I think that, like you said, most nurses come in for a calling, they want to care for other people, but once you're in there and you see like there's so many regulatory things that you have to adhere to, and there's these pressures of the budget and financial things that happen and reporting and these types of things. I don't think and I'm not sure how we could do it better, but I think that to make sure that people have a more realistic idea of what happens in the healthcare system, maybe we would be able to retain people more,
Right.
especially those newer graduates, because really I think sometimes it can be quite burdensome, to realize and to take on all of the things like in your first 6 months to a year. It's quite overwhelming to think about, wow, this is not what I, I thought I was getting into, right? So
Right.
yeah, I think that that's also an area I feel like, maybe there's a way that we can do this better to help prepare people.
Yeah, that's right. Can changing job help? Because that's the first reaction I see many people have. Like, I thought it was going to be this, but it's not, so I'll change my job.
Well, I think sometimes, because people maybe haven't used their resources to pull them out of their stress cycle, I think that's the only escape that they see, right? And unfortunately, it's not always better somewhere else, right? Every organization has their own complexities, own politics. I think if you are changing jobs because you want to see and experience something different, I think that that's okay. But if you're doing it purely to escape something, I don't think it's going to solve the problems because, again, ultimately, you're working under the same pressures in the healthcare system and they're not going to change just because you change your location. So I think as long as you are going in for the right reasons and changing jobs, I think it's okay. But just be wary that, there's going to be problems. They may be a little different,
Right.
but they also might be a lot bigger. So you just can't tell. And so
Right.
it's just
And you,
like the
you might
reality.
just walk into a worse problem
Correct.
than your current situation.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's so right. But there is other side to this also, that it affects individuals, but it also affects organizations. If individuals are stressed or they are caught in this stress cycle, or because the system is not working as it designed to work,
Mhm.
it really affects organization in a negative way. So it might put financial pressures, it might have a higher turnover of employees or low engagement. What do you think about that? Like, how are these two connected? And can organizations help individuals or individuals help organizations? Both have to work on some common things.
Yeah. No, this is a great point. I think we talk about nurses in general leaving the profession and organizations, but I also think that there needs to be a bigger spotlight on nurse leaders who leave the organizations because of the tremendous pressure and stress that they are under.
Mhm.
I know that in some organizations, the turnover in leadership is quite high. And the time spent to fill that position again or to have the people cover those positions, it creates more stress on individuals, but
Right.
it also creates stress on the environment, right? Because then you have somebody or you have people that, are trying to do more with less. And so I think that there are opportunities for organizations to really examine the span of control for nurse leaders. I recently was part of a engagement group, and so we talked about, what is the span of control for different groups within the organization. And when I said to them, as a nurse leader on a unit, you are responsible sometimes for hundreds of people. It could be 150, 200 people, like in the case of like the ER or an ICU, right? And they were just shocked. They couldn't believe it, because they're in charge of maybe 8 people. So, it's just like, I think that there's maybe different ways we can, model units to make sure that leaders have the support and the tools that they need to, at the end of the day, help support their staff to make them happier, give them the tools, help, provide broader education, give them different opportunities. And at the end of the day, that will mean better patient care as well. So I think we need to pay more attention to nurse leaders and what they are expected to do and what they can reasonably do. So I think it's a really important topic that I'm pretty passionate about.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. Span of control is often not taken into consideration or is not given importance. I don't know why, because it's not out there. People don't talk about it often, I guess. But it's directly related to the stress you are under,
Mhm.
or the potential for the stressful situations you are going to walk into.
Mhm.
Do you think the issue is equally serious for small organization as well as big organizations? Small hospitals, big hospitals.
Yeah, because I would say yes. I think that you think about staffing models and how many nurses you have taking care of the patients on a unit or a ward, and I think that the span of control is the big issue is, when you're asked to be doing HR things, asked to be doing quality, you're asked to be doing all of these things and making sure patients are safe and your staff is trained. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, the leaders have to compromise themselves, right? Like they want to do a great job. They want to do the best that they can do. They're put in positions because they've been great clinicians, right? And so that's what they know how to do. But then when they have all of these things that they're then asked to do, I think it can make people feel like they're not at their best, they're not practicing to the top of their abilities, and so in some ways it makes them compromise. And so I think it's a bad situation to put people in, and create stress and like some moral distress as well. Like it's just, I think, a product of the system that we have created um, to make our hospitals work.
Right. No, that's a great point. It also creates moral distress.
Mhm.
So the question obviously is then how should an individual approach a situation like this? Understanding system is the first step, and then finding a good mentor, working with mentor, having external perspective. Um, but that also takes some time, energy, and of course some strong will
Mhm.
to do it.
Yeah.
And what I have found through my healthcare interactions is if you have your true north or your focus as your satisfaction, and you are intentionally, continuously, and consciously working on that, like you realize that you must understand system better than you followed that true north, you did your MBA. So if you work on your satisfaction more intentionally, consciously, and continuously, that might help. uh,
Mhm.
Also, if you are working on the common areas of interest between you and your organization, and there are only two, one is growth and the other is financial independence.
Mhm.
So, um, if you keep your satisfaction related to these two, growth and financial independence, do you
Mhm.
think dealing with these situations would be better if we have that focus?
Um, so growth, I guess, if you're referring to growth of the organization or
Well,
growth of individuals.
your growth and your organization's growth. So
Yeah.
for organization, it means, I guess, serving more patients,
Mhm.
and financial independence, of course. The finances come along with that. For you,
Mhm.
it means how can you grow in your personal and professional workspace?
Mhm.
Um, and can you find a common ground between your growth goals and organization's growth goals?
I mean, I think you have to, right? I think you have to, which I wasn't very good at the beginning. I didn't have boundaries. And because I was very invested in the organization, I was very invested in my work environment and my staff, and so I always wanted to do the best. But at the end of the day, that didn't serve me well, right? And so I had to come to the understanding that more hours was not helpful for anybody, right? So always being available to texts and calls and emails and staying, 12 hours a day is not sustainable. And if I wanted to do better, I had to take better care of myself.
Right.
And so part of that was saying, these are the hours that I'm going to work.
Mm.
Please, call me if there's an emergency. Otherwise, call like the hospital supervisor. But it also was like really thinking about, like I said, going back to school was very important for me because I am a lifelong learner. I love to learn as much as I can. And so I felt that that was going to help me and then in turn help the organization as well. Because I think once you understand more about what's happening around you,
Absolutely.
you can help attain that goal, right? But if you don't know the why and you don't have that understanding, it's really not going to serve anybody, and you're just going to keep running against the wall and just like, what am I doing? So I think it really does. I think you can do both, but you just have to be very clear about your boundaries. And just, I don't think there are people in the organization that are going to say no to you. They want you to do better, right? They want you to help support their goals of growth, and financial independence, but they also recognize you need to figure out how to like help them get there. So I think that people are generally supportive of those things. That's why they have tuition reimbursement. They have these types of things, right? Because they do want you to help them by helping yourself.
Right. So how would you coach someone if someone is in this situation and because of just stress of the work or the situation, they are about to make mistake or maybe a wrong decision. How would you
Mhm.
pull them back and get them back to where they are safe and they are making the right decision?
Mhm. I think it depends maybe on the person, but and how far along they are, right? I often have these conversations with my own team, and I will coach them to say, why are you answering emails at 8 o'clock at night? I'm not going to respond to you, right?
Right.
And I think it's like, I think you can express concern for people and say, like, hey, here's something I'm noticing. How is this making you feel? I think it's, as a leader, being very deliberate and monitoring what's happening, for your team, to make sure that they are having that work-life balance, that they are, despite their passion, they can draw those boundaries and say, like, I can do this much today, but I also have life outside of my work. And so I think those are some things that I try to do. I try to coach others, especially like new leaders. And I just say, really, I'm very passionate about the boundaries, like, because I tripped myself up by not having boundaries. And I think sometimes that eagerness to please, creates that. So, I think that that's one of the things I do, is just not I mean, just coaching, just saying, like, here's what I'm seeing, and I want to help you, so that you don't have distress, and that you're not stressed out, and that you're not working somewhere else. Like, I want you to stay here with me. I want you to be on the team. How can we help you to stay here? So again, like, the dialogue, just the observation, the intentionality of it all, I think is really critical.
That's a really good point. I mean, it's a powerful question. How can I help?
Hmm.
Um, I haven't seen many, or I'll rephrase that. I haven't seen many occasions where that question is asked. How can I help? It's a cultural indication,
Hmm.
what kind of a culture that organization has.
Yeah.
How many times do you hear that question? How can I help?
Yeah.
Um, so that's a great point. And
Mhm.
again, great reminder that one should intentionally work on setting up boundaries. Um, they should really try to understand what's happening, where are they going, what's the alignment of their goal with the organizational goal. Is there one? If not, why isn't there an alignment? How is it affecting them? Because that, according to me, that's the very basic root cause of stress
Mhm.
or friction.
Mhm.
Um, so that's a great reminder that one should intentionally work on
Mhm.
these three things.
Yeah.
Um,
Another thing I do is, it may seem silly, but I often look at, like, the people that report to me, like, what are their PTO hours? Like, like, because I really feel strongly, like, if you have a lot of PTO hours, you need to take time off. You need to step away. You need that breath of air that's to say, like, okay, I need a break. I need to focus on something different. So, something as silly as that, I'm just like, that can be an indicator, quite honestly. So,
that's great. That's a rare what I said. I haven't seen that behavior in many leaders. So You're kind.
Again, like it's because of my own experience and what I have seen myself do. And again, I'm not perfect. Like I can still fall into those same behaviors. And so I try to help others not repeat the same things. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's how you get their buy-in, their engagement in
Mhm.
whatever you are trying to do as a team.
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
Great. Now, we are going to move on to the next section of this podcast, and we get a lot of questions about um, how do we handle stress, burnout, how do we handle situations where we are facing different reality than our expectations. And here I'm going to bring in the topic of AI, which is the hot topic nowadays. AI in healthcare, AI in nursing.
Mhm.
So these are rapid fire questions, and you don't have to answer them in 1 or 2 words, but whatever, however you would like to answer. So the first question, will AI solve the issue of burnout?
No.
Burnout in healthcare leaders, nurses.
I would say it's not going to completely solve because you still need to validate what the AI is doing. So there's still some work associated. I think it can break it down a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, what the AI is trying to achieve, you are still responsible for. And so I think that kind of overarching stress will still be there.
Right. I agree. I agree. But what I have seen is AI in healthcare is pushed at a phenomenal rate at this time. I mean,
Mhm.
I did not expect such a fast advance of AI, not on the clinical side, but on the administrative side also. Uh,
Mhm.
and those administrative tasks are burdensome for nurse leaders or other department leaders also. So
Mhm.
it might offer great help, but again, like you said, it has limitations at this point. But if it helps, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it'll also free people up to have time to do the things that they really love to do. So I think it'll be good in that respect and help maybe reduce burnout
Absolutely.
that way.
I hope
Yeah.
it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
So we talk about, so for the next question, we talk about satisfaction at work. We talk of joy at workplace. We talk about, on the other hand, burnout. But um, we all work, we get compensated for our work. So there is money involved.
Mhm.
Is there a relation between money you earn and burnout?
Yes.
Okay.
You know this, you know that saying, more money, more problems, right?
I know where that comes from. Yes.
Yeah. So I do feel like I've seen it in my own work. I feel like as you earn more money, there are more expectations and more stress and more burnout. So that's my experience.
Well, I agree. The other part of, or the other side of this coin is passion. Does having passion for your work avoid burnout?
No,
No.
no, I personally don't think so because I think that you can be passionate to the point that you burn yourself out because you become so engrossed in what you're doing that you can't again pull back and see like take that breath and realize like there are some things that are not in your control but you've dug yourself so deep that sometimes you lose perspective. And so I do think that passion is great to have. I think it keeps you going, but I think it can also be dangerous in that you can get too focused on what you're doing.
You get, in my mind, you get trapped if you cannot see beyond your passion, and then you keep
Yes,
hitting the same wall with the same force, and wall stays there, you get hurt.
correct. Yep.
Um, okay, so other approach to solve this problem is throw more resources at that. Do you think it will help solve the problem of burnout or stress?
Resources. I mean, I think like we were talking about AI, right? Like I think you could have some tools that help, relieve a little bit of the burden in terms of resources being more people. Sometimes that can create more stress, more burnout. It just depends on how those resources are put into the situation. So again, like not completely will it relieve burnout and stress. Um, it depends on how it's managed.
Right. Resources don't guarantee quality outcomes. That's what I have seen. So
Mhm.
I agree
Yeah,
that sometimes it might not help you.
it might
Um,
complicate things more.
yeah, true, true. More human resources on one problem might complicate things. Next question is a funny question kind of thing. If you do you think that if you know what's in your boss's mind, you will be less stressed or less prone to burnout?
Uh, I would say no. I would say that sometimes what you find out is in their mind is not aligned with what you think should be happening. So that can create more stress, right? So sometimes as you look up that ladder, you're like, huh, that vision is completely different than what I see down here, two or three rungs below, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's not always helpful, but sometimes it can provide clarity on murky waters, right? Like I think sometimes like that's one of the questions in our engagement surveys, right? Is like, what's expected of you.
Mhm.
And surprisingly, that scores low in a lot of places. And it's because there's some disconnect happening between where you are and where that person is two rungs above you, right? And so I think that lack of clarity does create more stress. So yeah.
You mentioned about PTO, taking time off. So
Mhm.
I see this a lot out there on social media that if you are burnt out, take vacation and burnout will go away. Do you agree?
No. Well,
Okay.
let me say it depends on how long, right? So I think that sometimes if you take, let's say, a 3 or 4 day weekend, I think by the second day, maybe you've unwound from whatever's stressing you out. Like, I think you have to account for the unwinding piece.
Mhm.
And so if you plan for a longer time off, I think that's more beneficial than just saying, I'm going to take Friday off and then I'll come back Monday because I don't find that very helpful because oftentimes people are still checking their emails, guilty, and doing these things, right? Because you're not able to fully disconnect for one day. I think you really need to take a longer time, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, and really have that unwinding time so you can enjoy what it is that you love to do. And then towards the end, start thinking about coming back again. So I think it depends on the amount of time off.
Right. No, I completely agree that taking time off is a must for unwinding or getting that um, acute stress off. But ultimately, like I said, you are burnt out because there is something that you cannot control. That is something beyond your control that is creating that friction.
Yes.
So taking time off is not going to solve that. It's a great or it's a must-have step in your self-care plan. But
Mhm.
also you must, again, where we started this conversation, you must go back to understanding what's happening, the system you are working in, and try to understand those out of control elements that are stressing you up, stressing you out, and start working on establishing control or start establishing your influence on that. So just
Because when you
taking
come
time
back, it's still going to be there, right?
still going to be there, and then you'll be more frustrated that I took time off but it's still there, I'm walking back into the same situation again. And that's why I think the problem of burnout is oversimplified many times. Like burnout means I'm just overworked or something like that, and I need time off. So I caution the people I work with, like, be very cautious when you say that I'm taking time off to so that I can come back from burnout. It's
Yep.
not that simple.
It's not that easy.
Now, one very um, direct question. What comes first for you, money or satisfaction?
Haha. Well, I live in Silicon Valley, so money is important to be able to live here. But I've also learned that money is not everything. I think as I was completing my MBA program, I really had to think about what is it that I love to do? What is it that really gets me excited and passionate? And, I made a choice to, you take on an opportunity that really focused on the things that I'm excited about. And at the same time, that, comes with a change in your salary. And I had to come to terms with that. And I was actually okay. I think many people during the pandemic took a hard look at what they do every day and what's meaningful to each individual. And I think that was part of what happened to me as well, is like what makes me happy, what makes me passionate. And so although that means, maybe a lower salary, like it was okay with me. Not everybody can take that,
Right.
or can have that choice. And I totally get that. But I think I was fortunate that I could. And so I think that, money doesn't make everything better. So I chose satisfaction. And yeah, I think that many people are doing that these days, is thinking about what they want and what they get paid. So,
Right. No, absolutely. You said it right that money is important. Money is a must in the world we live in today. But
mhm,
money is a facilitator. Money is not the goal.
mhm,
Money facilitates many things in our lives, and it's a great resource. So when you look at that as a resource than the goal, uh,
mhm,
you are left to set your goal at something else. And if you set that at satisfaction, I think you are better positioned to handle your work life overall.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, so great. That brings us to the end of this episode, Jen.
All
And
right.
thank you very much for answering questions very candidly and in very great detail. It was a pleasure talking with you. And one thing you said at the beginning, I would like to reiterate that before we end the podcast, that if you are feeling frustrated, if you are feeling stressed, try to understand the reasons than just to react to the situation, because just reacting might not serve you well.
Mhm.
It might get you into more trouble. And it is so important to make this the central point or central theme in coaching anyone we work with. So thank you for saying that. Thank you for keeping that at the center of your answer. And it was lovely talking with you.
Thanks, Amaya. I really appreciate talking with you about this, and I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah, sure. We'll talk more.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Bye.